Creighton head men's basketball coach Greg McDermott apologizes for a locker room speech.
Well, McDermott himself admitting he made a, quote, terribly inappropriate analogy.
After the Blue Jays lost to Xavier, coach said, guys, we got to stick together. We need both feet in. I need everybody to stay on the plantation. I can't have anybody leave the plantation.
This notion of exploiting Black people for economic gain is foundational to the United States. We see it in major sports, intercollegiate sports and professional sports.
That's how this works. It's like we got the scholarship because of our athletic ability, but at the same time, it's like they do control us.
The history of HBCUs as institutions goes back to the late 1830s. When the first HBCU was established. So the first series of HBCUs, Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, you had Wilberforce University in Ohio, and then you had Cheyney University. So when historically Black colleges and universities were established, they were primarily teaching institutions, and it was a connection between primary, secondary, and what we now call post-secondary education. And then later, in 1890, there was a Morrill Land Grant Act that was passed by the federal government, which led to the establishment, really the proliferation of HBCUs. So many of the modern day HBCUs that we know were founded after 1890 by that Morrill Land Grant Act. In terms of athletics,
the important name to keep in mind is Edwin Bancroft Henderson. He is the one who spearheaded the creation of the Interscholastic Athletic Association for the Middle Atlantic States.
Edwin B. Henderson was known as the grandfather of Black basketball. He formed the Interscholastic Athletic Association in 1906, the first all-Black conference. These leagues were organized and promoted play between Black basketball teams along the mid-Atlantic coast. During that same year, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, the NCAA, was established by a group of leaders from Ivy Leagues. The NCAA racially excluded Black athletes and HBCUs from participation, only allowing PWIs, predominantly white institutions. The creation of the Interscholastic Athletic Association allowed Black athletes to still emerge and participate within their own all-Black conferences, and led to the creation of HBCU conferences known today. Assimilation efforts followed the civil rights movement in the 1960s, and as a result, PWIs went from wholesale excluding Black athletes to selectively recruiting Black athletes who could economically benefit their institutions. White institutions were able to undermine the momentum and athletic viability of HBCUs. Since the events of desegregation, many Black student athletes have now had the choice: PWI or HBCU.
I ended up deciding to go to the University of Miami because I thought it was the best fit. I thought the coaches had my best interest in mind and I'd be able to excel there. Making a decision like that, it's like you gotta be comfortable where you're going. You gotta trust the people. I gotta like where I wanna be, but at the same time I feel like I could be successful. The way I attacked my recruiting process was like the coaches I was able to like really build a relationship with, or like felt like they were being genuine. Coach L, head coach, definitely has a resume of sending players my build and size and like skill level to the NBA. That was definitely a big factor for me. And another thing, like playing in the ACC, like the ACC is considered the best basketball league. Playing Duke and North Carolina, Louisville, like day in and day out, that's definitely like was another factor in my decision.
A lot of people looked at me, like, this kid's crazy. Why is he going to HBCU? And then some people really did understand it. Like the people that did know the value Morehouse brought to you, did know what Morehouse is about and the HBCU culture and what it teaches you and stuff. I went and played in a Fab 48 tournament in Vegas. A lot of basketball players know about Fab 48. And we played a whole bunch of teams, a whole bunch of college coaches were coming to see me. And I actually met my Morehouse coach, Coach Brewer, there. He introduced himself to me and spent some time on the trip with me and got to know me. Kind of took it upon himself to give me an offer to go to Morehouse and took me on a visit to the school, and I really enjoyed myself there.
As a basketball player who, my father played in the NBA, and I was playing with the option of going to like a mid-major, D1 school. HBCUs and Morehouse especially wasn't something on the top of my mind until it was exposed to me.
Kind of got to see the HBCU life for what it was. And it was also an opportunity to kind of shift the culture.
It was like a huge deal. It was the first time they're going to have somebody who had the other offers and was ranked, stuff like that, like me go there, whatever. I decided, I committed. I loved it. It was kind of one of the best decisions I made in a really long time.
Nobody from where I'm from, Toronto and back home, has been there before, especially with a lot of Canadians going to D1 schools. There's not that big of an HBCU culture back home. Not a lot of people know what HBCUs even are. So that visit was very eye-opening for me, and it was really cool, especially being in Atlanta, so I kind of fell in love with it quick. My dad, after playing pro ball and stuff like that, and he has a lot of strong relationships with a lot of high D1 coaches and high-caliber players and stuff like that, he was shaky about it at first, just because it obviously wasn't the initial plan. But then my dad embraced it, and he knows everything Morehouse has to offer, like the network, the connections, what it brings to the table, the education I was going to get. So he came around to it. I could have been like any other kid and took a route. Like I could have went JUCO for a year and been committed to a D1, or worked my way and got another better offer, or got D1 offers or whatever. If I wanted to go junior college, that could have been a route. And that's what a lot of people were pushing me to do. So bad decision, wrong decision, no. Difficult decision, yeah.
Prior to desegregation, HBCUs often enrolled athletes of exceptional talent. 12 HBCU players were drafted into the NBA from 1947 to 1959. Earl Lloyd was drafted from West Virginia State in 1950 by the Washington Capitals. He was the first African American to play in an NBA game. Sam Jones was drafted to the NBA in the first round from North Carolina Central University in 1957. He won 10 national championships with the Boston Celtics and led the team in scoring for 3 of 10 years. In the 1960s, the number of HBCU draftees quadrupled since professional scouts looking for African American players discovered HBCU campuses as new sources of talent. Willis Reed was drafted in 1964 from Grambling State. He later won a national championship with the New York Knicks and was named one of the 50 greatest NBA players in 1997. Earl Monroe from Winston-Salem State was drafted first round in 1967 by the Baltimore Bullets. He was NBA's Rookie of the Year and became inducted into the Naismith Memorial Hall of Fame. In the 1970s, the NBA drafted 64 HBCU players, the most of any decade, but as college athletics became more integrated, the HBCU numbers declined in each subsequent decade. The power of HBCUs in the world of college athletics soon died off, as more Black college athletes were funneled to PWIs. Though Black college athletes gained momentum athletically, they lost out culturally from the rich environment and support HBCUs offered. Today, Robert Covington is the only HBCU alumni playing in the NBA.
Anybody who knows HBCU basketball knows Tyrus Walker. He went to Morehouse. He graduated the year I was being recruited. So the year I came in, he had just left. He was under-recruited, underrated, and didn't get any major D1 offers, and actually took a chance on Morehouse and didn't make it to the league. It really depends on the player and the determination. It's easy to get recognized anywhere. If you're good, you're good.
I don't think hinders anybody's path, because it's like if you're a big fish in a small pond, you should be able to shine just as bright as if you were at a big D1 school. You're just kind of playing and representing us a little bit better.
PWIs are bigger stages. BWIs have the ESPN contracts, the TV contracts, and you're playing on TV every other night. That's the stuff that HBCUs wouldn't be able to offer.
The NCAA started to secure television broadcasting rights in the 1950s. This is where the differences in HBCU and PWI revenue stem from. Due to the evolution of television and radio, networks began to pay the NCAA millions of dollars to broadcast games. The early business and wealth accumulation model was largely exclusive to whites. HBCUs were excluded to those same broadcasting opportunities. Without regular television contracts, shares of major conference revenues, and occasional large private donations, participation in the highest levels of competition was not possible for HBCUs. PWIs have since become a popular destination for top Black athletes, with more funding, opportunities, and exposure compared to HBCUs. HBCUs remained at a lower level due to the Black athlete extraction that occurred, ultimately causing a damaging impact on the economic viability of HBCU athletics still present today.
HBCUs are different when it comes to circumstances. You're not that big stage guy anymore, right? So you're going from high school playing games on ESPN, being treated like a celebrity, coming out of the locker room and little kids want to get your autograph, whatever. Playing on a national stage to can't fill an arena.
Fans bring in one source of revenue for athletic programs. HBCUs have much fewer resources than PWIs, so building a large fan base can be difficult. There is a vast difference in the attraction and attention gained at PWIs compared to HBCUs.
A lot of these schools are definitely known, the history that the school brings for playing for such an institution. You can not know who someone is, and then it's all of a sudden everybody know who he is because he's going to such and such school. Being associated with certain schools, the notoriety of being associated with some schools, that's probably the biggest thing about going to PWIs.
Not only did the historically white institutions essentially create themselves based on chattel slavery and the stolen wealth that slavery provided to whites, which is called unjust enrichment, but you had the simultaneous unjust impoverishment of HBCUs.
But we're dealing with less resources. So I'm going from playing at a program where I'm walking off the court, getting in an ice bath, going in the sauna, having my jersey pressed and hanging in my locker, whatever, to waking up at 6 a.m. for workouts and our jerseys aren't even dry from the dryer yet.
What you see today is just a continuation of that unjust enrichment of historically white institutions, white athletic departments, largely white governed NCAA and corporate sponsors to the expense of historically Black colleges and universities, Black businesses, Black vendors, and other Black organizations.
Most PWIs are so put on a pedestal, so every kid grows up wanting to go to one. Whether that be your state school or people from Florida, they grow up wanting to go to Florida State, not FMU. A kid could be playing basketball and see Florida State make a run year after year after year. They're not gonna want to go play basketball at FMU. They ain't see FMU make a run after year. That's a big part of it. That's playing on TV. That's the contracts, all that. All starts from the funding.
With the Power 5 conferences that are making the millions and billions of dollars, you don't see any HBCUs represented. And actually, within the NCAA model, many of the HBCUs are classified as LRIs, which is limited resource institutions.
PWIs generate much more total revenue each year from ticket sales, contributions, rights, and licensing.
Funding, you got that access to it. I go to the chiropractor twice a week. Definitely won't have the availability to stuff like that at a HBCU.
It's really a JUCO environment, a junior college environment. When it comes to the athletic department, it's they're really grinding. I love it though. I honestly do. It humbled me. And honestly, that is kind of the fire that you need, that they put in you, that pushes certain players to rise to the top.
That's the tough part. And you tell a senior coming out of high school, which one you want? You're gonna strive for what seems better.
Funding, an essential example of systemic racism that persists just when looking at the differences in facilities at PWIs compared to HBCUs. From a 2013 study on the funding of HBCUs, the findings show that in the state of North Carolina, the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and North Carolina State University independently received more funds than all of the HBCUs combined within the state. Such discrepancies lead to a contrast in athletic aid and overall expenses. From a 2019 study in the Journal of Intercollegiate Sport, findings show the average expenses and revenues between all HBCUs and PWIs. In each category, all averages for HBCUs are less than half the amount at PWIs.
The institutional distancing is that, well, the white schools were built literally on the backs of people of African descent who were enslaved, and there hasn't ever been a reparations for that. It's just been a continued wealth accumulation. And then you had the black schools being created in that same context with fewer resources, and for over a century now, have never been able to catch up in terms of the wealth.
It's the funding. It's like, but then the funding is just like the basis. It's like everything that money can pay for. Money can pay for anything. It's just going to be better. Then again, it depends on what you prioritize as a person. Because what do you think is better? Do you want all the flash stuff, or you want to go somewhere where it's going to be family oriented?
The black college athletes who chose to go to the historically white institutions strategically looked at it as, these institutions have a wealth of resources. I can build cross-racial networks and connections, learn from some of these spaces, but I'm going to basically engage in strategic responsiveness to interest convergence. I'm going to say, I've got holistic consciousness that it wasn't built for me. I'm going to have internalized empowerment to maximize my benefits within this setting. And then I'm going to engage in counter actions that say that they only think I'm an athlete here, but I know I'm a student, I'm a leader, I'm going to get all these benefits, even though they would love for me to just be just an athlete. It was a very distinct form of strategic navigation that was converging on the idea that we are holistic people. We are talented. We're trying to be successful for ourselves, our families, and our communities in a broader social political context that seeks to devalue us.
Going to a school like Miami could definitely be beneficial if you could use the politics to your advantage.
Elijah transferred to University of Miami his junior year from Stony Brook University in New York. Playing his senior year at University of Miami, he was hoping to gain the benefits of playing at a high-level program under a strong coaching staff. He was looking to dominate and develop as a player to finish his last year strong in order to declare for the NBA draft.
At the same time, there's people caught on the tail end of these PWIs, and it's like, they don't really care about you.
Feeling too unprepared and unsupported during his time at University of Miami, the path to the NBA draft that he anticipated for himself did not pan out.
If the PWI likes you, they gonna make sure you succeed. If they don't like you, they could definitely mess up your future. Just couldn't accomplish my goal in Miami. They was just using me as like a Swiss Army knife for real. Like, okay, he could do this, he could do, like, oh, they need support here one day, and it's like here, it's like, and that's how he was using me for like pretty much the whole season. But it was like, it wasn't what I was brought there to do.
Elijah decided to take his grad year to transfer back to his previous school, Stony Brook University, to play one last year under their program and then finally declare for the NBA draft.
For my last year, I couldn't just like put my future in their hands anymore. That's why I decided to leave again. They wanted me to come back, but I'm like, I can't trust y'all. I just needed somewhere I'd be able to just play basketball, no distractions, be able to lock in. Because I'm trying to play pro, I felt more comfortable going somewhere I'd be valued, but at the same time, like, my opinion mattered. I knew I'd be okay.
What the Black college athletes experience when they're at these historically white institutions is a twilight zone. When they put their jerseys on, they're loved, they're celebrated, they're adored, they're viewed as special.
Our fans are ruthless. Oh my God. Because one day they're going to love you. The next day, they're going to be in your DM sending you death threats. Like, it's cool. Like, it's cool when you're winning, but like, when you're losing, you don't want fans. Them fans become your worst enemy.
Once they take those jerseys off and they're walking on campus and they're viewed in totally different lights.
Definitely. It's not like that in every situation, but a majority of athletes do feel like they're loved for just being an athlete.
And that has a damaging psychosocial impact on Black college athletes' holistic development. Because you're like, I worked this hard to get here and I thought I was going to be accepted and have all these opportunities. And now I'm just reminded that I'm only viewed in a positive light if I fulfill a certain role. That's a very damaging thing. I would argue that that's akin to what slavery did to us, is that your only value is to work. Don't act like you want to read a book. Don't act like you want to start your own business. Don't do any of that. You work and you do what I say. And that's really what a lot of these Black college athletes experience, albeit in a different way, in the 20th and 21st century at these historically white institutions.
The sad truth is we got the scholarship because of our athletic ability, but at the same time, it's like they do control us. Like they tell us what to do, when to do it. They tell us when to go home, when to come back. For as long as you're on that scholarship, anything they say, go.
It's to coin a phrase from Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Black Labor, White Wealth. Black labor is contributing to the economic enrichment of these historically white institutions, these historically white athletic conferences, the historically white National Collegiate Athletic Association, and the corporate sponsors who are supporting this economic machine. So when you think about the multi-billion-dollar, capital B, the multi-billion-dollar industry of major college sports, it's largely because of football and men's basketball. And it's the March Madness basketball tournament, which a significant portion of the players on those teams are Black. And then in football, once again, you've got a significant majority of the star players being Black.
The athletic industrial complex brings attention to the neoplantation system that lives within PWI collegiate athletics. What is this neoplantation system? Walter Byers was the first executive director of the NCAA in 1951, and he said it himself best. In his book, published in 1995, he admitted that the NCAA is firmly committed to the neoplantation belief that the enormous proceeds from games belong to the overseers and supervisors. The plantation workers performing in the arena may receive only those benefits authorized by the overseers. The so-called plantation workers that make up the majority of the basketball and football teams at PWIs are Black. The overseers and supervisors, they are mainly white. NCAA's demographic database for 2020 shows the coach and student athlete racial demographics of men's basketball teams. In Elijah's conference, the ACC, 73% of head coaches are white. These are the plantation overseers. On the team itself, 54% are Black. These Black student athletes are the so-called plantation workers. These demographic statistics of student athletes and coaches are almost a complete inverse, highlighting the white power and dominance. The neoplantation system suggests collegiate sports are a much bigger game, rooted in economic activity and oppression, with white individuals reaping the main benefits and economic gains of Black labor, similar to the times of slavery. On average, Power 5 football coaches earn $3.7 million annual salaries. Head coaches of men's basketball teams at the 65 universities earn an average of $2.7 million. Black men are 11.9% of those head coaches. Power 5 athletics directors earn on average $707,418 annually. Black men are 15.2% of these athletic directors. The 5 conference commissioners earn on average salaries that exceed $2.5 million. None are Black. It is clear that the NCAA makes billions of dollars from the revenue college athletes bring into the university, brands, and TV networks. In 2010, the NCAA agreed to a 14-year, $10.8 billion deal with CBS and Turner to air all March Madness tournaments, which has since been extended to 2032. Now, the NCAA makes over $1 billion a year, with unpaid basketball players as the main attraction. From the networks, universities, commissioners, and coaches, each party gains some financial payout. Student athletes receive nothing. But without Black student athletes, college basketball would not even attract as much attention, exposure, and money as it does. So it is clear as to why coaches and athletic programs need Black college athletes to stay on the plantation. Black college athletes remain exploited and are unable to make money off of their own success. This is because of the NCAA's principle of amateurism. To maintain amateur status and to be eligible to play, athletes are not allowed to receive any money or gifts based on their own name, image, or likeness. There has been controversy in response to this principle. In the last few years, changes have been pushed for. In September 2019, Governor Gavin Newsom signed the Fair Pay to Play Act, which allows college athletes to hire agents and make money from endorsements effective in 2023. With the law only in California, more progress is being worked on to impact the entire conference. Since December 2020, bipartisan bills have been introduced to the House of Representatives to force the NCAA to change their bylaws and permit all college athletes to capitalize on their name, image, and likeness. There has yet to be an adoption to these new NCAA bylaws.
If we look at kind of the history of settler colonialism, imperialism, and the formation of modern day capitalism, all of those ideologies and economics structures, if you will, focus on resource extraction, domination, and exploitation. The United States was founded on settler colonialism. So this notion of exploiting Black people for economic gain is foundational to the United States. And we see it in major sports, intercollegiate sports and professional sports. The Black body is currency.
I'm not trying to make them seem like bad people. They just gone, their priorities are messed up. It's about money or keeping their paycheck.
The whole neoplantation system is definitely more for the high major big program, but for HBCUs, they really show love and kind of give it how they can. For Morehouse, like speaking out of like personal experience, I would say they do a really good job with that. I think HBCUs are probably gonna be the first schools that pay their players because they show so much love. Like honestly, like we're talking about programs that there's not even enough full scholarships on the team to give everybody, and you have players that are giving their 110% to play.
The whole neoplantation thing, that's what it is. I'm trying to exploit it too. You gotta try to work the system. The reason I transferred to Miami was to use their platform. It just didn't work out that way, but it was I'm gonna do what I do. It's gonna be one at Miami, like the history of playing for Miami, and then it'd be, okay, he played for Coach Larinaga in the ACC, okay, now I'm using the conference, but I feel like it takes a different kind of mentality to think like that. Because at the same time, we are being used. I'm just trying to make it positive, I'm gonna get the most out of it. But if I get to where I want to go, I'm not gonna say going there was a bad thing, but it's really some people go there, people that go to college I'm gonna get drafted in a year or two, end up going to college for 4 years and graduate and can't get a job.
So what about their lives beyond sports? Black college athletes often choose PWIs because they believe these universities are a path to a career in professional sports. But fewer than 2% of student athletes go on to play in the NBA or NFL. Black student athletes are often given more support off the courts and fields at HBCUs compared to PWIs. These Black individuals are more than just athletes. So, do PWIs treat them as such, and prepare them with well-rounded experiences for post-graduation? Or are they treated as merely a disposable commodity for their own benefit?
The core reason why they were brought to the institution is different. So for a lot of the Black college athletes at the white school, the primary reason because of athletics, not for all of them, but for many of them.
I don't think I have a place there as a regular student. Because if I was a regular student, I would never apply to the University of Miami.
At the HBCU, it's also because of their student prowess and potential. If you are a cultural, holistic person at an HBCU, whereas at HWI, you're largely an athletic commodity.
At HBCUs, the founding principle was that African Americans, number one, are human beings. Number two, are deserving of quality education. And number three, we are socially and culturally connected. So that means everything from the naming of buildings to the curriculum, to who the teachers are, to how you're connected to the community. All of that is embedded in the HBCU identity, the HBCU diaspora.
When it comes to like the buildings on campus and stuff, on the freshman tour, we did this thing called Olive Branch for freshmen where like, it's like Hell Week. The first week of school, there's really no classes. All the freshmen are on campus. It's a lock-in. They can't leave campus and they have to like bond and get to know each other, and they have to go through these like rituals. And during that time, we did it. They woke us up at 6 a.m., told us we're going on a run. And on the jog around campus, they actually told us the history behind each building and the names and stuff like that.
So when you're at an institution where that is front and center, like the names of buildings really let you know that who you are, the legacy of your people is greatness in engineering, agriculture, education, textiles, the law. This is the essence of Black excellence across the board.
Like stuff like that is just, you're not going to get that anywhere else. Like I wouldn't have known half the things, or, you know, I feel like a lot of kids at Morris really take pride in stuff like that. Like there's kids that can literally like point at stuff on campus and tell you the history about it. Like there's not very many other schools, there's not very many other students in other places that can like do that. So I value that.
That's very different than at a historically white institution where you're going to see Thomas Jefferson celebrated, other former enslavers, Confederates, who really promoted a lot of anti-Black racist beliefs. So you have to understand that these institutions were largely founded on Eurocentric ideals and still operate in that way today. So the idea of admitting us to these schools, it was more so by happenstance of an adaptation, not because of a true desire to value our humanity and allow us to be integrated in a way that we can help transform what that space looked like.
Compared to HBCUs, PWIs may often prioritize student athletes' athletic involvement over academics, stunting Black student athletes' room for personal development and educational exploration.
A lot of these schools, you just go to the easiest, they put you in the easiest classes. Or they try to put, when I came to college, I was an engineering major, architectural engineering major. But they made me switch it because it's a lot, I take these classes, I take like 2 classes during the summer, it's just a lot.
There's prominent stereotypes in our society that say that Blacks are intellectually inferior, human hierarchies that said whites are the pinnacle of humanity and Blacks are subhuman at worst, but inferior humans at best. When we talk about the outcomes that we see in terms of racial gaps in graduation rates, representation in leadership positions, all of these different dynamics that we see in society, they're largely situated from a deficit-based framework, whereby the argument is all outcomes that we see in society are based on individual choice, personal effort, and individual capabilities. An anti-deficit framework says policies, structures, access have a part to play in that. Not to mention, let's highlight the resiliency of these groups that have been facing disadvantaged situations from the beginning and how they're navigating those spaces in spite of the barriers. So the anti-deficit framework says not only are we challenging the stereotype that Blacks are inferior, that Blacks are lazy, we challenge all of that. And we say Blacks are gifted, Blacks are talented, Blacks are resourceful, and what factors contribute to their navigation of conditions that are not designed to facilitate their success.
I wanted to play basketball anyway, so it's like I understand, switch my major to business. But my freshman year, I just took general ed classes because I was planning on taking the engineering classes like the next year. The thing with me, my sophomore year, I started taking all those like classes that I was supposed to take my freshman year. Then my junior year, it was like, oh, you're on pace to graduate, but you're gonna need to take one each summer session and a winter inner session, like to be on track to like get the amount of requirements. So it's like, okay, now you're behind. That's what happened to me.
A lot of Black students who go to HWIs initially can experience imposter syndrome, stereotype threat, where it's like, man, I'm one of the few of me in this major in engineering in this class. Can I really do it? Whereas at the Black school, it's like, no, you are intelligent. You are smart. You have greatness in you. You have greatness all around you.
Some schools that I had Green Bay. Some other like very, very predominantly white schools, like almost like little to no Black people. And that's what I consider my race. And yeah, they're D1, yeah, they're low mid-major, but like I can't see myself there. I'll probably lose my mind.
30 people, and be like 3 Black people. And if I'm looking at only my screen, I might be the only Black person up there now.
Being around everybody who looks like you is like something that's irreplaceable, honestly. The culture.
The main word that I would say that delineates the experiences of Black college athletes at HWIs and HBCUs is culture. Sense of belonging, social emotional learning, academic engagement, all of these different dynamics that we talk about for all students, it connects to cultural identities, cultural norms. So when Black college athletes go to historically white institutions, largely what they have to do to navigate is called assimilation. You have to adjust to an environment that wasn't created for you. There's not going to be a range of cultural artifacts, affirming, messaging, curriculum across the campus abroad. You may have certain Black studies or Africana studies in certain Black faculty in certain areas to help you with that. But largely, the only place where your identity will be affirmed is in these athletic spaces.
If you're going to school and you really about your work, you can do it. You're not going to be that good on the court. It's like, it's give and take. Like, if you have to rush out of practice and go to class, you can't shoot after.
Well, what does that foster? That fosters athletic role engulfment. You're going to go where you feel comfortable. So you're not going to be involved in student organizations. You're not going to get involved in sorority and Greek life or fraternity life. You're not going to consider studying abroad. You're not going to pursue internships.
You really don't got time for it. It's like, when you get on the court and it's like, he didn't improve or he didn't put that much time in because school takes from that. He had an internship. He had to go to class. So it's like, you decide, like, which one do you want more? Like, am I going to do this pro and I need to, like, make sure I'm doing the best I can on the court, or do I, but it's rare people that can do both. I'm not saying you can't do both. I'm not one of those people. Like, I can't do both. Because I'm not going to lie. I go to the gym. I'll practice at midday, lift, go back to the crib, eat, nap, do maybe some homework. I'm going to go back to the gym at night.
Speaking for myself, like what I'm doing with my life is not basketball related right now, other than obviously it's COVID, but like HBCUs, it showed you like there's more than just this. Like, this can't be your only route. Yeah. Going to Morehouse opened up like endless doors.
The difference between their sense of belonging was at the white school, the Black athletes felt connected because of their athletic identity and status. Whereas the Black college athletes at HBCU said, I'm a Black student at an HBCU who happens to be an athlete. So the athletic identity salience at the white school is more pronounced because of the demographic composition at the school and because of the cultural ethos at the school. Whereas the demographic composition and the cultural ethos at HBCU is almost polar opposite. You're being surrounded by a preponderance of Black people, who a majority of which are not athletes.
In a 2018 study, a USC professor, Dr. Sean Harper, found that Black males accounted for 64.3% of the men's basketball teams, 57.1% of the football teams, but only 2.8% of all full-time degree-seeking undergraduate students.
So for the Black student athletes, when they're on campus and they see, well, wow, we constitute a majority of the football and basketball team, but I only see maybe a couple of other of us on campus, the message that's internalized is your primary purpose here isn't to get an education. We're not here to make you feel welcome, to connect you to your Blackness and the rich history that people of your lineage played in creating this country and contributions to the world. No, 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 we're not doing that. You come here to be a brute athlete, you entertain us, you perform well. Whether you graduate or not, we don't care, because ultimately we're getting what we want out of you. We're making money off of you. You help us kind of give the illusion of diversity because you're here. Even though people don't know that you're really unhappy and you're really unsupported, all they see is that you're running and jumping and scoring for us. So it's all well, you smile in the papers, and you bring positive energy to, or positive donations and reputation to our institution.
To be honest, I hate it here. Not a terrible experience, but I've definitely been tossed around and like played with since I got here.
Out of the 100 people that play, this is just a guessing, but like 100 people play, like 70% of them are not happy or don't like the situation.
When you go to a historically white institution, the recognition, the celebration, and the valuing of African Americans and African people collectively is marginalized at best and ignored altogether at worst. The structural fabric at these schools from its founding and even today, they do not want to fully embrace us. And this is what America is, right? This is what the whole Black Lives Matter movement is saying, is that you don't love us and respect us as humans and our experiences. You want to engage in what's called surface level diversity.
Going on my visits to PWIs and then going on my visit to Morehouse was completely different. HBCUs foster this type of love that's like, you're one of us. You can tell they care about you. It's honestly a feeling that is like no other.
So from a symbols, representation, curriculum, and sociocultural vibe on campus, you're getting this idea that being Black is more than just being an athlete. Being Black is more than just being an entertainer. Being Black is more than just being a criminal.
I didn't think it was possible to do well in school until I got there. Morehouse pushed me in the business direction, and I kind of never looked back. Like, got straight A's, Dean's List honors, honor roll, highest GPA on the team, whatever. Like, I really found what I want to do and what I like and kind of like ran with it. I know for a fact if I went to a PWI or I was just playing basketball at another school, like, yeah, I'd probably still be a business major, getting good grades, but I'd be a basketball player. Like, I wouldn't look at my life how I look at it now, like I'm probably actually going to go into the business world and be a millionaire or whatever based off of just business and not even athletics. If I was at a PWI, that probably would have never happened.
The Blacks who chose to go to HBCUs, their strategic navigation was, I know that we live in a racialized white society. I'm going to go to an institution that's culturally affirming, that's going to provide me with the skills, the confidence, the networks to be able to navigate society post-graduation.
I'm about to get my degree. I'm not even going to use it. Like, that's, like, my degree's about to sit for like 10 years. Even after this year, I was considering pro. Like, I know, like, that I'm going to go pro after next year. Like, okay, I'm going to be making money playing basketball, not that degree.
PWIs, in contrast to HBCUs, set Black college athletes up for little success post-graduation, as they are mainly celebrated and economically exploited for their athletic ability, yet seen as anti-intellectual and even disposable once their athletic eligibility ends.
Going to HBCU, if anything, it showed me that, like, your racial identity and you, like, who you are as a person is more important than, like, the fact that you play basketball. Because once you take that step into, like, a lower level, even though you may be a high-profile player, once you take that step into, like, a lower level with a place that's not focused on athletics, it really shows your true colors, like, in terms of you kind of got to get everything else together. Once you walk into an HBCU environment, like, different people are pulling you in different directions, and you kind of find yourself.
In many cases, the most harmful thing is when Black college athletes at HWIs conflate their racial identity with their athletic identity. Like, they don't see a difference.
I side with my athletic identity more than, like, Elijah. It's more Elijah the basketball player.
That's very dangerous because guess what? Your athletic career will end at some point. Your race doesn't end until your life ends. So if you have conflate those two, then you basically say, I'm no longer a black person because I'm no longer an athlete, which is a gross mischaracterization of who you are as a human being and as a holistic individual.
Let's look back to the NCAA's principle of amateurism. The NCAA stresses the primary importance of the educational, physical, mental, and social benefits through the participation of intercollegiate athletics. But to what extent is that truly the case for these black student athletes? College athletics at predominantly white institutions are a neoplantation system. Black college athletes controlled over their bodies, but even more so, their identities. In recent years, top high school basketball players like Makur Maker, Hercy Miller, and Shaquir O'Neal have started to change the game, change the college basketball narrative. These student athletes had received offers from Division I PWIs. Many expected them to choose NCAA powerhouse schools like USC, LSU, Kentucky, or UCLA, but they shocked the world by choosing an HBCU. In 2020, Makur Maker committed to Howard University. In 2021, Hercy Miller committed to Tennessee State, and Shaquir O'Neal committed to Texas Southern. The three student athletes spoke of the well-rounded cultural experiences they would gain from attending HBCUs, while also being able to make a change, an HBCU movement. Not only are they contributing to the gains and exposure of HBCUs as a whole, they also help to work against the neoplantation system that lives within PWI college athletics. After all, the neoplantation system doesn't seem to be dying off anytime soon. Creighton men's basketball head coach Greg McDermott was initially suspended for his racially insensitive comments and was said to have participated in a program to learn about institutional racism. Only 4 days later, McDermott was reinstated by the university. An ongoing cycle of racial oppression and white power within college sports, an even larger reflection of the United States.